Hello, hello. Welcome to Unapologetically Wild with me, Katie Sontag. And I'm so excited because today I want to talk about what's so alive for me as I do every week. And I want to speak into the fact that this week, if you're like me, you plan a week out, right? So you kind of like sit there on a Sunday and you're like, let's think about what I want to get done this week. Let's think about what's happening, especially if you're an entrepreneur and you're a business, because you're always trying to allow yourself to have the week where you get to get everything in and you've got deadlines and always for yourself, right? Because no one really is controlling what you do because it's your own business. And it's so interesting coming from being in a workplace where people give you deadlines and there's things you've got to do and, tasks you've got to fulfill by a certain time or, you know, all of the things, right? Because when you're an entrepreneur, there's no real timing unless you make it a timing. You are the one that controls your schedule. You're the one that controls everything that you do. And this can be really good and really bad, right? Because if you're lucky like me and come from a really disciplined background, that is quite easy because once you set yourself goals and tasks and when you need to get things done, you're good at keeping on top of them. But it also can be hard because if you don't do them, no one does them. And if they don't get done, it doesn't really matter, right, to anyone else except you. So there's this really interesting thing when it comes to entrepreneurship, and it's like, how do we hold the discipline line? And then how do we allow flow and creativity and love and freedom into life, right? Because a lot of people, when they go from a full time job, we sit in this thing where we're always told what to do. We have bosses we have to report to, all of the things, right? And that's why a lot of us leave because we're like, fuck this. It doesn't align with my values. It doesn't align with who I am. I'm doing all these things that I don't really enjoy. And for what? For what purpose, right? And I think it's really interesting when you look at that because you're like, all right, so I'm doing this thing that doesn't align with me, that makes me really tired, that, really makes me feel not fulfilled in life. And then you're like, okay, well, this sucks, but what do I do now? And if you're anything like me, you'll start a business, right? Entrepreneurship is its own spiritual awakening and its own self development by itself, let alone the fact that I went into an industry of self development, right? And we all have self development in our own way, right? Like in a job, you're still going to learn skills and tools and ways to be with what actually serves you. But when you go into entrepreneurship, this is where you have to take control of your life, right? You have to set your schedule so that, you get um that course out. Sorry, I just got a message from spirit and I just it just hit me from the angle and I just had to be with that for a moment. One thing I don't normally talk about, but when I get messages from spirit a lot of the time, it for me is like a message in a voice or from a different direction that kind of hits me. And normally that means I stop and I have to be with that for a moment to receive it. Sometimes it's for sharing, sometimes it's from my own self, right? Which is so beautiful. But anyway, back to entrepreneurship. I love this because entrepreneurship is this beautiful balance of like doing the thing and honoring what you have to do and what you get to do because you've got the freedom of your whole day, right? So your whole week, your whole month, your whole year. And a lot of that when you first come into it is like, I've got to hustle, I've got to get the thing out, I've got to do the thing, and I've got to make sure I have the discipline to hold that so that I can actually produce the things I want to do. And also so you make money and so that you reach people and you serve at a higher level. Because a lot of people become entrepreneurs because they want to serve more people because they've got a higher purpose, right? So sitting down on a Sunday is a really big thing for me. And what I do is I have this beautiful journal, which it's like a planner and it has each day and tasks and different things and ticking them off. And it's funny, I'm so used to being someone who's really good at ticking off tasks and getting things done that sometimes I feel like my days I get nothing done. That's my own perception, right? And then when I tell people what I've done in the day, everyone's like, holy crap, You've done so much today. And in my head, I'm like, well, I've got all these places to go, all these things to do, right? And I love that this week has just shown me something that I can't teach myself, right? Because the universe is always showing us more and what we get to step into. And I've been recently looking at money, right? It's a really big thing. And in my childhood, money was scarcity, lack. There wasn't much of it. It was a really big piece where we didn't have money and it was always like scraping by and working that out. And me being in a full time job, I didn't really know what that scarcity was in the way of earning my own money because I got taught how to save as a child. Um, and that was great. And I also got taught I could enjoy beautiful things. And having a full time income, you can do all of that, right? You don't really think about the management of money and you don't really understand that sometimes it's not always just free flowing. Because I got mine every 2 weeks and that was just a really beautiful thing that happened. And so it's interesting how, when you have less of it or when you're not receiving it consistently or all these pieces, how you get to manage it and understand what it's providing you. And also, it gives you a lot more gratitude in it, but it also brings up all the money stories I've had over my whole life, which I also, coming home, have realized that my parents and my brother and everyone in my family and the community in general, like, everything's expensive and rich people are, bad. They don't give, or the more money you make, or the more you talk about money, the worse you are, or, the more you're not giving and you're not, being a person that does that, right? Had a conversation with someone recently who was like, "Yeah, but you're such a beautiful giving person. Like, you make more money." And I was like, more money I make, the more I get to give, right? Especially in service of my business, because it means that I get to use those resources to run more retreats, to run more events, to do all these big things. And if I don't have the resources, how do you give from an empty cup? How do you give from a space when you don't have anything to give? And so I find this so interesting because it's been a really interesting lesson, right? Going into a space of entrepreneurship, because I now understand a lot of the people when I first started business where they were, selling and selling and selling and selling to make money. And I didn't quite get it because I had the backing of a full income, right? And now I understand why they came from this desperate energy, why they came from this scarcity and lack, because they didn't have the foundation behind them to support them. And it's a really big thing I see in relationships and friendships and business partnerships. Money is a really big factor. If people cannot make money and actually serve in the way that they want to, then it's really, really hard for people to. Hang on one sec. Sorry, Roxy's my vacuum, by the way. She's decided she's going to start up again, which is a bit silly because I'm like, Roxy, girl, you're getting this in real time, Let's pause her. Thank you, my love. She will keep vacuuming later. Don't worry, team. So, what I find really interesting is that, everyone needs, there's a baseline of money, right? Not everyone wants to be a millionaire. I'm fucking going to be a millionaire, but not everyone wants that, right? Like, not everyone wants a massive business to be seen everywhere. Some people literally would love to make 70K a year, which is amazing. 90K, 100K, right? Whatever's going to sustain them and their family. And whatever else they need, right? Some people would love one beautiful big holiday. Some people want time off. They don't want money, but money will buy them time. This is the other thing that I don't think everyone quite realizes. But a lot of the time, what I realize when I now have less money is that I use the time I would have had before now doing the things that I would have paid people to do. So I used to have a cleaner, right? And now I have Roxy that does my vacuuming. What a gem. Ah, she's my robo-vac, by the way. And that's amazing, right? That's a privilege and a half to have one. And so grateful because obviously I have a dog that drops hair everywhere. And so Roxy's amazing because every day she goes around and pretty much keeps it down, right? You never say gone because let's be real, the dog drops hair as she walks. So it's never fully gone, but keeps it down so it's more manageable. But I used to pay a cleaner once every 2 weeks, and now I don't quite have the funds for that. I now use time in my day to clean, right? And I'm grateful that I do. And I used to have a mower man. Uh, and now my dad does the mowing. So that's really amazing because that time I can then use to either make money or give back to myself. And so that helps because then in entrepreneurship, if you've got a full cup, you can give from a full cup. You serve better. You serve the world better. As we know, when we go onto an airplane and they say, put your mask on first before anyone else's, that is literally it, right? You are making sure you're okay, you're good, your cup is full before you aid someone else. Because if you don't put yours on and you're dead, you can't save them. You can't save the children, your friends, all of these things, right? You need to be okay. This is a really big thing as well about entrepreneurship because when it first came, I'm used to the hustle and I'm, making sure I'm doing all the things, it's all right. And I'm like pushing all the things out there, not from the scarcity sake though, which I was lucky about because I had a full-time income. So I had pushed to a degree, right? Because let's be real, sometimes the safety of that is not always helpful because you don't always push things out. But the other side to the coin of that is that I had more money to give me time back. And I think this is really, really pinnacle because when we look at rich people, a lot of the time they pay people so they have more time. Now that doesn't mean they're not doing hard, they're not working hard or doing the thing, right? Because they have to do the thing to get there. And there's nothing wrong with being rich. There's nothing wrong with dreaming big. There's nothing wrong with wanting multiple companies or whatever your dream is, right? Multiple cars. Some people love cars. Side note, we actually met this guy the other night, an older guy. He was about 82 when we went to a jazz bar. I went with my brother in Newcastle and he was lovely and he just loved building racing cars. And the most beautiful, wholesome thing about that was people paid him and gave them their racing cars to fix and to build and all these things, right? And he just loved it. And that's how he got to serve and also got paid, right? Quite well because he was really good at what he did. And so the beautiful thing about entrepreneurship is there's so many levels of that. You have to have discipline. You have to be able to do the thing, right? Because if you don't do anything, nothing moves. But coming back to what this week has taught me, and it's only Tuesday, is that you can make all the plans in the world, but the universe is going to only make them happen if they're meant to, right? Because there's nothing that's meant for you will pass you by. And if it's not meant for you right yet, it's not going to be there for you. So, a beautiful example of this is today I was meant to have a beautiful guest who will be on next week's podcast because I'll be interviewing her on Friday. And I'm very excited to interview her. But I think it's really funny. Yesterday, I had a house inspection. So, if you're anything like me, cleaning is such an energetic thing, right? So it means that what I'm doing is I'm like removing the old, allowing it to move, and, being around a fire on the weekend and being with people, but being my old self. Because I've really struggled sometimes to be who who I used to be when I lived in Newcastle was someone who did whatever everyone else wanted, right? I wasn't very good at standing up for myself or being this human that was super fiery and super outrageous that I grew into when I was in Sydney in the army. And I really found myself in that. And I really was able to stand on my own 2 feet and have opinions and do all the things, right? Like I do on my podcast and in my business. But in real time, sometimes in community, I find myself defaulting back to my old self because it's easier, cause less friction, all the things, right? And I had sort of a moment on the weekend where it hit me and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm doing it again. And instead of making myself feel shit about it, because let's be real, when we go into a next level, our old self, is going to pipe up, right? It wants to stick around. It's what we know. It wants to stay alive because it literally is you. And not there's anything wrong with your old self. However, when you grow, you want to get to that next level, but you need to be a whole different person. So you need to change your whole personality because your personality literally makes your personal reality. So if I want to grow into a millionaire, I need to become a millionaire in the way of who I am and how I act and what I do, right? And how I position myself energetically. Now, this doesn't mean I'm not authentically me because I'm still exactly who I am. It just means that I'm choosing to step into something even bigger. And I'm choosing that I want to take my life that way. And that's really exciting. And also means that, you know, I have to make different choices. Like I can't keep living the way I'm living or doing the same things to get there because what got me here is not going to get me to the next level. And I love this because it's a beautiful, beautiful reminder that we get to choose all the time, right? And I've said this multiple times, but we get to choose that next level. And to me, money is the key to that. And because it was such a big lesson growing up with it and in scarcity and lack and all these pieces, it's like, how do I get to honor money and love money and be with it and allow it to flow in and out of my life, right? It's a current. Money is a currency. So it flows in and out. It's not meant to flow in and you're meant to keep it all. It's why a lot of really rich people make big risks and they put in property and all these other things, right? Because it's not meant to, you're not meant to hold on to it. And that's, like, oh my gosh, it might never go, it might never stay if I don't hold on to it. Absolutely not, right? You're not also meant to just throw it out as soon as it comes in. How do you honor it? How do you honor the flow of it? How do you allow it to be what it needs to be? How do you honor the fact that it comes in your business and you get to detach it from your worth because it's nothing to do with your worth? And as an entrepreneur, that's a really hard thing to do because you put yourself out there in such a big, vulnerable way and you're sharing your gifts and your magic. And if people aren't buying, sometimes it's very easy to attach to that you're not worthy or people don't think you're good enough or all of these pieces, right? Because you're not getting any sales and you're like, but I'm like literally sharing my gift, but I'm showing the world, but I love what I do and I serve women. And the results you get are epic, right? But when it doesn't happen consistently, there's always a lot of things that come up. And so those stories can really take over. And that's why a lot of people end up not continuing with business, right? That's why people sometimes, just before when they're in the breakdown, they quit. And instead of like getting to the breakthrough, which is on the other side, because sometimes it feels easier to stop and be like, I didn't make it. It didn't work. Let's just move on when you don't actually know what's on the other side of that breakthrough or that breakdown to the breakthrough. And it's really interesting because I've been having a lot of chats recently with a lot of people. As for me and my cards and the tarot and everything, and my angels and guides have been talking to me about the rebirth and the recalibration, right? We're going through a bit of a time in the world where a lot of us were used to and really good at hustling and, doing a lot, pushing, throwing shit at a wall and hoping it would stick. And now we're all starting to realize that our life and our health and our freedom are way more important. And so when that happens, that actually requires a lot of rest because a lot of us have put ourselves through so much doing that we're burnt ourselves out. Not just one way, right? Like there's so many ways you can burn yourself out. And there's also so many ways that if you don't keep honoring the rest and the relaxation and the, ability to slow down, you actually won't be able to receive more and be more magnetic and actually honor the fact that you as a woman have such incredible powers and gifts like the witchy, deliciousness. When I sit in that, when I sit with my guides, when I talk to them, when I honor them, it's amazing what drops through. Like even on the weekend to sell a couple of, coffee grinders on Marketplace, boom, there's $70 straight into my bank account, right? Well, actually in cash, even better, right? And so that then can serve me for the next week. And it's just like trusting these downloads and honoring the fact that when they come through, I get to make money. And I also get to enjoy it and have fun with it and be grateful for it, right? This is my life. It gets to be a journey. There's ups, there's downs, there's highs, there's lows. That's how this works, right? And there's so many lessons in all of those pieces. And just so happens to me to be for me right now, money, right? And the masculine. This is another piece, right? Because I don't know if I've spoken about it in the podcast before, but the masculine for me was the military, right? It still is to a degree because it still does give me an income which supports my life. And I've been talking to a lot of friends about the difference of, some people's masculine is their husband or their partner or, some people it's the government. Like, giving them subsidy. And it's just interesting to see how when we are women in our power, what we choose. Do we choose to take that for a period of time? Maybe that's our goal. Maybe it's about honoring what we need for a period before something else comes in. Maybe it's about, some people I know have gone back to jobs, come out of entrepreneurship and gone back into jobs. And I think the beauty of it is there's no perfect answer for anyone, right? Like I'm going to do something different to you, and I have a different purpose and calling to you. And I don't think that there's a certain way or there's a better way, or, if it's a job or a business or living as, stay at home mom, stay at home dad, whatever that is, right? Like you get to choose whatever serves you. And I think that's the most beautiful gift of all. And though in this rebirth and this reclamation period, when we're reclaiming who we are, who do you want to be? Like, if you see people out there who inspires you, who makes you want to be like, I want to be like them, and then starting to make small movements towards that goal. And for me, this week, keep coming back to it, but I haven't really gone into it. There was this moment where on Sunday I cleaned the house and I, moved the energy, right? Because cleaning the house means that I cleared up any dense, old, crappy energy that was sitting in this house, right? And I've cleared this house many times with sage, and I'm very much into that. But it was like I fully depth cleaned it. Like I really got into everything, right? It's probably the first really big clean I'd done because it was for an inspection. And I even I bought new pillow covers for my outdoor pillows. So I put them on. And then, you know, my dad, bless, and my mom got me these things to put my pillows in and put other things in. So we've built them. And it was the first time that I've actually met the real estate agent, because I haven't met them in the whole time I've been here, because when they first came, my dad got the keys and all the things, right? And so what happened was I was meant to have a gym session with my mum in the afternoon, and she ended up going to Sydney for work. I was meant to have a podcast episode today. That got moved to the end of the week. I was meant to do so many things yesterday, and everything just got pushed. It was like every meeting, every thing that I had written down on Sunday, being like, this is my week, this is what I'm getting done, all of it moved. And even to the point where today it's raining right now. So I was like, I'm going to go to the gym. Mum was like, let's move it to tomorrow. She didn't want to leave. She's got lots of work on. And so it's funny because it's taken me out of my routine. For the last few weeks, I've been going to the gym in the morning, been feeling really good about it, all the things. I walked Piper in the rain yesterday for a little bit. I've chosen today not to. And, I'm like, been missing the gym because I'm like, oh my gosh, like I was going in the morning, now I'm going in the afternoon to honor my mom, and then now we're not going. And, you could say, yeah, you can go to the gym now. I agree. I definitely could. And I actually don't think I will, because one, I committed to doing this podcast, which I am doing, which is great. And two, in this recalibration and rest period, it's shown me that like last night, I needed more sleep than I've needed in a really long time. And I haven't done anything crazy to need that. But it's almost like my body, with the clean, with allowing myself to rejuvenate, with wanting to call in this really big life, right? This next level. And I wrote down the other day all of the things that I'm calling in, the beautiful big things like, you know, allowing myself to make $1 million in business, and allowing myself to like be with what that looks like, giving myself an income and as a business owner. And it's just really cool stepping into that CEO energy, and then also freedom in life, and then calling in love, and all of these big things, right? Which have been big for a while, but I wrote them down and I like really got specific about what months I wanted these things to come in on, which is a really, really big thing, right? And let's be honest, it's not about like getting them perfectly, but it's about really honoring what I want. And if you've been listening to the 2x, 10x thing that I had been listening to, part of me knows that stepping into the next era of all the things that I want, I have to change my personality to change my personal reality. So it's really sitting with what does that mean? And for me right now, it's resting. Like I even got something ready, which isn't till like a Black Friday sale, right? Like I've got it all sorted. I'm so excited. That's not until next month. I thought it was this week. Like it's almost like everything's weirdly recalibrating and redoing all this weird stuff. And there's a reason, right? Like I don't need to know why, I don't need to understand it, but it's like everything I keep seeing and feeling and being with is like, this is your upgrade. This is your recalibration. This is the time when you're in the weird in between. And I've spoken about this so many times, but I feel like this year being a 9 year, right? It's 9 is the ending, and I'm living in a 9 house. So the endings that are coming to like even the systems that I'm using, right? I'm looking into that. I'm looking into new systems to go into. Like there are so many pieces that I get to be with and that I get to look at. And a lot of it is, how I want to hold myself, how I want to move it to the next level. It's putting myself out there for speaking events, which I did the other day, right? Applying and putting myself into a group to get more speaking events and going out and meeting people in the community and being with all of that. But part of it also has, because I'm such a giver, has asked me as a beautiful Cancerian to keep giving back to myself and honoring me. And that's been a really big piece, right? Because I give so much to other people. And I had someone even say to me the other day, like, I thought because you give so much that you would receive that much back. And I do in many ways, but a lot of the time I don't in some other ways. And so a lot of the time what I need is to make sure I'm giving back to myself. And of course, the universe is providing me 2 beautiful days where I get to give back to myself, and I get to talk about this on here, right? Support my masculine, the structure that holds the feminine flow and creativity. And without rest, I don't have that. Without allowing myself to go with the flow. Because if you'd asked me a couple of years ago if the last 2 days, where they've been completely not like worked out. Even today, I took the coffee machine instead of going to a networking event. I took my coffee machine to the guy at the coffee place because it's still not fully functioning. And he was like, "Oh, maybe it's just due to, the grind, all the things." I was like, "I've tried all of that. Like, I'm happy to take it if you reckon that that's what it is. But I've honestly tried everything. Can you please take it?" And he took it. He was like, "Oh, of course. Let me work it out." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, thank goodness." But it's wild, right? Like I felt called to go, and he called me yesterday and he was like, "Come and bring it over, bring it back." So I did. And following the nudges meant that, I didn't get to go to that networking event. I didn't get to do the podcast. I didn't get to all these things, but that was all it's like everything was moved divinely so that I got to just literally relax and chill out. And I just like, one of the biggest lessons I've learned in the last few years is there's nothing wrong with that. It actually is such a gift. And normally there's a reason for it. And because I felt really tired and I've just not, you know, been fully here, like with everything, I've just been recalibrating, going through my own transformation, rebirth, reclamation, trying to work out who I am in a place when I was someone totally different. And that takes time. It's not like a quick fix, you know what I mean? Like it's not like I do a podcast in a week and all of a sudden next week I'm amazing. Um, it takes time to honor that and be with that, and what does that look like, and sit with yourself. And it's just constant recommittal and constant choice of who you want to be and what you want to create. And you know what? It never works out exactly as you think it will, but it always works out 10 times better. So I want this to be a beautiful reminder that when the universe shifts things and you think, "Oh, I'm not getting all these things done." No, that's very divine and very perfect. And the only way you move forward is by learning the lessons. And this is a big piece, is the more I look at the lessons of this, so what it allows me is growth, flow, like being with the fact that I can't control everything and that's okay, which is a really big piece because I used to want to control everything. And that life gets to show me and I'm always protected by God, universe, spirit guides, angels, archangels, right? I'm always protected. I'm always divinely guided, and everything is working out for me, even in the chaos, even in the crazy times, even in the weirdness that sometimes I'm like, what the fuck is going on? Like, it feels so strange. I'm always guarded. I'm always protected. I'm always loved. And that's a really big piece because, there's been some things and there will be some things where I'm going to be super outspoken. And, I have had moments where I'm like, will people not love me? Will people want to, you know, not be around me, or because they disagree? Will I lose people? And you know what? You will at times. And that's okay. And as long as you believe in you and you're true to you, and that if that's your next level and you know that it's worth it for you, do it, because it's not money that changes a person. It's not getting fame that changes a person. It's not getting all of, you know what I mean? Like going out on a yacht or being, crazy or whatever. Like none of that actually changes you, the external circumstances, unless you let it. You're always going to be who you are as an essential being. And then if you receive more resources, more love, more people, different things, you get to choose if that's right for you. And also you get to chase it, the dreams, the money, everything, the business, the spotlight, whatever you want, you get to have it. And if it doesn't suit the people around you, or if they're not ready, or if they haven't got to the stage where they can come with you, it's better for you to let them go and leave them to work out their own journey, so that when they do meet you again, if they do, if they don't, you can love them from afar. But if they do meet you again in that journey, you really get to love them and be with them and choose that. And they get to be on your level and with you. And I think that's a really, really big thing, but you've got to back yourself, because it's nothing worse than being in a prison. And trust me, I've done this a lot in my life. There's nothing worse than being in a prison of your own making, because you're not actually being honest with yourself or not saying the thing and speaking up. I've done it for so many years. So trust me, and I still navigate the shadow side of my life in that all the time. And especially coming home, I've had to really face the shadow side of the fact that, yeah, I still want to people please, and I still want to be perfect, and I still want people to like me, even though actually they're probably not the people that I want in my life, which is so interesting. And some of them are, right? Some of them are beautiful humans and I'll love them anyway. It doesn't really matter. But, there's this time when you get to be and say who you are and have opinions and be your own person. And that is now. There's no other time. People leave, let them leave. If they stay, love them. And most of all, though, love yourself and back yourself to the ends of the earth, because you're the only one you have for the rest of your life. No one else is living your life and no one else is you. And yeah, I think that's a really big thing that's hit me this week, is like, you get to be authentically you and say whatever the fuck you want to say. And honestly, people can come with you or they can leave. And you just get to honor the fact that that is who you are and that is what you believe. And who cares if you believe something else in 2 years' time, right? That's what you believe in this moment. That's what you want to stand for. That's what you want to do. Do it, right? Because we all change our minds. We all learn. We all grow, right? And you get to be in this moment now and honor what you want and how you want to move through the world and who you want to be. And that's more important than anything else. And trust me, the people that love you will want that for you, because when they watch you not being able to do that, it's actually really hard to see someone and all you want for them is to just be them, even if you disagree. Even if you're like, that's not how I think, but that's okay. Because it's harder to see someone trapped in their own head and trapped in their own reality than it is to see them going boldly forward, even if they don't know what the fuck that means. So I just wanted to let you know that. And I hope that that sinks in. And I know that the right person will hear this and it will serve you. I would love for you to let me know what your dreams are, what your goals are, how much money you want to make, all of the things. Let's share all of it. I would love to celebrate you in all of it. And I just hope you have the most magical day through this rebirth, through this reclamation. And I love you, and go and be unapologetically wild.